roll into this. Welcome, welcome to the thought leader panel for Techstars Healthcare Accelerator, powered by Permanente Medicine Mid-Atlantic States. I'm Keith Kamhai, the Techstars Managing Director for the program, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined by three leaders from Permanente Medicine in Washington, D.C. And this is from the region covering Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia for Kaiser Permanente. And they'll be talking about trends they're seeing in healthcare, how startups can play a role in transforming care delivery generally, and also specifically within their own system today. Before we jump into introductions of the panel and the thought leadership, I'm going to take just a minute to give a little commercial overview of the program and tell you where you can get more information about that. But then we'll go back to focusing on the future of healthcare and innovation. Brief commercial is that the program is for entrepreneurs who are meaningfully transforming healthcare delivery, making it more accessible, personalized, and efficient. And we are looking for solutions that enhance patient outcome, reduce cost, and improve care experiences. I won't go through a lot more detail than that because there's a lot more information in two places. One is on our website, and if you search Techstars Permanente, it'll likely be the first link that comes up, or else Vance is going to drop the link into the chat now as well. And you can go there for a bunch of information. There's a lot of stuff there, and I encourage you to read through the whole page and the links. But a few things of particular note are the Apply Now button that are right on the top of the page with a final deadline of June 11th. I am going to note that not listed on the website, so bonus for those of you showing up live with us here, is that there's an early action deadline of May 8th coming up in 11 days, which basically gives us more time to review applications that come in early because there's a crunch at the end, as you might imagine. And so we'll be able to give a more thoughtful review of applications that get in by May 19th. So I encourage you to go ahead and do that. It doesn't take long to apply. There's also information on the page about the $220,000 investment that each of the 10 companies in the program will receive. And finally, I know we get a lot of questions wondering if what you're building in particular is a fit for the program. I'd encourage you to have a look, at generally the description, but then also specifically, there's a link there to Permanente Medicine's Specialties and Institutes page. And if you can see your solution being of value to one of the dozens of areas that they specialize in, that means you're probably a fit for the program, and provided you're at the right stage and doing something innovative and so forth. So that's a good way to just tell if this is something that we're generally looking for as part of the program. One other commercial for more information is that tomorrow morning, we're also listed on the website, we're going to have an information session in AMA. We did one of those last week as well, so this is a repeat of the same thing. If you were with us last week, no need to bother. There won't be new information at this one, just maybe some slightly different questions. But Jessica Locke and Dr. Richard McCarthy from Permanente Medicine will be joining us for that. And you can register for that through the website as well. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into our panel discussion, and we're going to begin with some introductions of our esteemed panelists. So Rebecca, if I can have you go first and tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your background.
It's a true pleasure to be here. We are all super excited about this program. My name is Rebecca Fitch. I am an internist by training. I have been with the Permanente Medical Group for about 17 years. And my role here currently is as the Associate Medical Director for Quality. So I have kind of oversight over all of our quality programs, our NCQA HEDIS reporting, which goes up every year and is something that we're incredibly proud of.
Phenomenal. Okay, Michael, how about you?
Thank you, Keith. Thanks. Good afternoon. I'm Michael Stone. I joined Mid-Atlantic Permanente Medical Group in 2012 as an interventional radiologist, fresh out of training. About a year later, our medical group decided to form an innovations team, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the founding members. Along with Jessica Locke, I've co-chaired the group for over the past 10 years. Also, during my time here, I've served as a certified physician builder within our medical record. And so through these roles, I've been able to see the evolving challenges that have faced our physicians, but I've also been able to see the creative solutions that we've implemented. So I'm really excited to be here today. I'm really excited for the opportunities for collaboration through this accelerator.
Perfect. Sandeep.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. Sandeep Sankanini. I am the Regional Medical Director for KP Mid-Atlantic's Advanced Care at Home program. And I also serve in an additional role as the National Medical Director for KP Care at Home enterprise-wide. So I am a hospitalist by training. I joined MapMG straight out of residency in 2018. And then in 2019, we started our program where we really focus on improving better care in the home of our patients. And then, of course, when a patient's in the hospital, ER, urgent care, when they get home, is that care plan being followed through? So that's really been my focus over the last few years. So really looking forward to working with you all.
Phenomenal. All right. And then just to round out, I'm Keith Kamheim, Managing Director from Techstars for this program. And I've been a founder for most of my career and sitting in the seat that most of you are sitting in today. And for the last decade or so, I've been helping other founders now that I've, after a few decades of doing my own. I've been at Techstars for the last 7 years, and you can see more about my background on the website, so I won't go into that. But the run of show for this, the rest of our session today, 2 parts. First, I'm going to walk through a few broad topics, and we'll kind of look at current opportunities for innovation in healthcare, some lessons learned from past examples of implementing innovative solutions within Permanente Medicine. And then we'll go future looking and talk about crystal ball predictions in each of their areas of focus. And then finally, how they might hope to interact with some of you if you're fortunate enough to become part of the program. We'll use whatever time we have left after that to take some audience questions. And here's how we'll do the audience questions. Language. All right, no problem. So for audience questions, rather than the chat button and rather than trying to come off mute and having that be with a large group, I'll ask you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So right under us here, there should be a Q&A button, and you can go ahead and enter questions in there. Vance on my team and Jessica from Permanente Medicine will be reviewing the questions, and we'll be taking some of those questions from the audience and posing them to the panelists at the end, probably our last 20 minutes or so. But with that background, so I encourage you to use that button there. And with that, let us jump in and start with kind of current opportunities. And so broadly speaking, again, this program is designed for entrepreneurs who are transforming healthcare and making it more accessible, personalized, efficient. And the solutions we describe on the website is ones that can thrive in a value-based care environment to enhance patient outcomes, reduce costs, and improve care experiences across diverse populations. And so with that in mind, maybe I can ask you each to give an example of a current challenge and resulting opportunity that you're seeing for innovation within each of your fields. And what types of challenges would you personally love to see a founder solving and work with them on? And so maybe Rebecca, if I can go to you first to cover that one.
Yeah, so again, I won't spend a lot of time just talking about our organization. I know that Dr. McCarthy and Jessica spoke about that at the prior AMA, and we'll be able to talk to that again tomorrow. But at a high level, again, we are a very large kind of multi-specialty integrated value-based medical group. One of our emphasis really is on delivering evidence-based clinical care at a population level, and we really do pride ourselves on being able to do that in kind of having and fostering kind of nation-leading clinical quality metrics that are backed by evidence. And I think when we look at a system like ours, a lot of times people will say, well, that gives you an advantage, right? You have an integrated system, but we all know that in this space, as healthcare is becoming increasingly more complex as well as specific, we're also facing patients who have increasing access to information, both good and bad, increasing demands on our physicians to do more in limited time, to manage kind of the patients in front of them, as well as the data and requests that are coming through. We need to continue to kind of look for innovative solutions to continue to serve our populations well, especially as we think of how are we prioritizing the right interventions, be that medications or other procedures for the right population, the right patient at the right time, acknowledging and respecting their decisions through shared decision-making platforms, and ensuring that we're really setting our physicians up for long-term successful careers by decreasing cognitive burnout. So I think that those are like the challenges that I see from a kind of a large-based population health perspective where we are now. We want to continue to deliver the amazing clinical quality that we we are able to do. But we want to synthesize and be as efficient and personalized in our care that we're able to do so. And, again, as we look at the broad kind of, topics that are available for us to play a role in, it is quite broad and far-reaching, but I would include everything in, the wake of chronic condition management, from things like diabetes and hypertension control, over the course of women's health, as we think about menopause, which is an increasingly hot button topic, weight management and lifestyle medicine. Again, with the new GLPs, there's increasing questions about best use case scenarios for weight management, as well as we're trying to, balance the cost that's associated with those medications, engaging patients who are young and healthy so that they are with us for the longevity of their lives, as well as we work on, things that help to promote behavior change to keep our patients young and healthy. And then we also have some interest in kind of cancer care and end-of-life care. So I think there are we excel in a lot of these areas, but it's the continued kind of focus on the demands that are placed to continue to be able to do that well, and looking to see what are the innovative solutions that we can find that help us to manage that. I think that it is a tall task to be able to take this on, but that's why we're looking to kind of partner as we want to become more innovative to address these solutions moving forward.
Terrific. All right, why don't we go to Michael and then Sandeep?
Absolutely. Thank you. I think as a diagnostic and an interventional radiologist, I think one of the biggest challenges is volume. And a couple of the words that Rebecca said that really resonated with me were, one of them was specific. So we're looking for more and more specific data at the patient level. That means diagnostic imaging exams are getting more complex because we need more information. Biopsies are becoming more complex, pathology, laboratory, all of these integrate. We have to make the correct diagnosis and then tailor to the correct treatment. And so it's one of the challenges is, one, just dealing with the sheer volume of the number of studies as our patient population ages, as our medical workforce ages. We simply don't feel we have enough diagnostic radiologists and other specialists to meet the demand of our aging population. But we also have to deal with all of the information. The expansion of medical knowledge is going at the fastest rate in human history. So how does the diagnostic radiologist read an exam and understand the knowledge of what the oncologist needs to know? And so these are the challenges. So how can we get faster? How can we get more efficient? How can we deal with volume and complexity? And I think those are the challenges that we're meeting, and we're really looking for innovative solutions to try to continue to take care of our patients in a timely and cost-effective manner.
Yeah. And Sandeep.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, so hospital at home and care at home is a very rapidly growing, I guess, subfield within medicine and healthcare. I think there's a lot of active research being devoted to this care space and around the safety of providing care in the home, right? So we hear about it in the news, and if you're keeping up with what's going on, there's very large investments being made across health systems, payers, even the government in this space, including at the congressional level, right? So there's actually a recent multi-center report on hospital at home published by the CMS. And so it's a very hot topic right now. And at the same time, it's important to identify the appropriate problems so you're not creating solutions for problems that don't really exist, which is, I think, something I initially had challenges with myself, right? So, and I think the other opportunities in this space are, you do have an aging population across the US, and additionally, there's many patients who are elderly and at home alone. And so how do you better take care of those patients, right? How do you keep them safe at home? Frailty is also a big topic. And then, of course, logistics, right? How do you get, you have Amazon for everything else, but how do you create the Amazon and the delivery systems for healthcare to get there faster and more efficiently to the home? So those things don't exist. The tools don't exist. There are now companies looking into it, but I don't think there's universal and well-accepted solutions, like similar to what you have in like EHR models, which are widely accepted out there. So I think there's plenty of opportunity out there.
Tremendous. Okay. And so again, this is just a sampling of a few areas of the many where there's opportunity for innovation as we look at today's healthcare system, and that could have we're kind of in the present now of things that could have an immediate impact. And hopefully some of you are working on some of those or some of the many other areas that Kaiser Permanente focuses on. So if that's kind of the present, let's take a step looking backwards and then forwards next. But for the backwards looking is to start giving founders a sense of, what does success look like? What are some of the lessons learned from, if you look back a few years at innovations that you were contemplating and then ultimately adopted within your system? What did that process look like, and where are they now? And maybe if I can ask you each to go over an example of that as well. And why don't we start with Rebecca again on this one?
So a couple different things I would head on. One is, I think, relatively recent for us as we're making adoptions and utilizing in our outpatient arena ambient listening much more. And I think it, initially was a change for clinicians to use. I think many physicians are struggling with just the day-to-day demands of talking to your patients, feeling like you're engaged with your patients, documenting in an electronic health record, ensuring that you're, kind of building that patient-doctor relationship. And so there's been really a need that our clinicians have expressed to need something that's going to help decrease that cognitive burden. And what we found through ambient listening is that that's really come to facilitate that. On the patient side, I think they've also felt it as a way that it allows the clinician to engage with them on a level that, not to say that they weren't able to engage with them before, but it allows for greater, kind of eye coordination and connection with the patient in the room. That's been really, I think, transformative for them. In addition, I think what we're seeing is improvement in just data collection, right? So from a data perspective and a documentation perspective, we're finding that the notes are better a lot of times. And we're in an atmosphere now, again, I mentioned a little bit where patients have greater access to information. One of the things they have access to is open notes, right? So they can actually go in and take a look at their own notes. So they're actually seeing what they're talking about in real time is being reflected back in their notes. And so I think we've found that to be something that's really, I think, hit for us on a lot of different levels in terms of what we find to be valuable, that it's, increasing patient engagement, facilitating our patient-provider interactions. It's reducing cognitive burnout for our physicians, and it's increasing kind of our quality of our data and documentation. So it's hitting a lot of those buckets of information. On another note, and I'll touch on this, and then I know Sandeep is going to talk to it a little bit more in his portion, but is on remote data monitoring, which has been, we initiated some of this in the outpatient arena through remote blood pressure cuffs and glucometers, where that information is coming directly into our EMR. We had a system in place for hypertension control where we allowed patients to come in for free blood pressure checks, which was great, but for patients who are, again, increasingly frail, or it's difficult to get in, or they live far away, we now have a way where we can check their blood pressure from home, and it integrates into our EHR, and we're able to kind of count that towards our quality performance metrics. So again, it's satisfying the needs that we have in terms of a care delivery system for quality of care, but also meeting patients' needs and ease of kind of providing that information without a significant burden on them to come back into the office. So that's been a win. And then I think Sandeep's has been able to transform that on a whole nother level. So.
Yeah, Sandeep, why don't you pick up from there? That'd be great.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, so really our experimentation, I'd say, in remote patient monitoring, which eventually led to something very concrete and again, rapidly growing, happened during COVID. So we realized that, okay, this is going to become a very big problem for us very quickly. And if we didn't have a way to better manage our patient population, as these surges were happening, we're going to be faced with having a lot of patients that didn't need to be in the hospitals and didn't need to be in our ERs, winding up there and clogging up the system, right? So at that time, we realized, well, pulse oximetry is probably the best tool that we had at our disposal. And so we deployed pulse oximetry. We got as many of them as we could for our region. And then we found a third-party vendor that we were partnered with, a startup, pretty small startup actually, who would then integrate those devices and the data that's coming through the devices into a platform for us that we could easily manage a very large patient population acutely day to day, right? So at one point during the peak of the surge, we had outreached and were remotely monitoring over 1,000 patients actively during the COVID surge. I think it's closer to 1,400. And so the additional opportunity there was that as we were working with the founders, it became a really it was something I was looking forward to. Like we were meeting with them quite regularly, like weekly, because it was something that was moving very quickly. And we realized that this team was very engaged, right? Like we were sharing this problem that we all were facing, and this collaborative effort behind it was really remarkable. And so when we were asking for changes to be made, they understood that it was because we were trying to change the clinical course of care for many patients. And some of those could potentially even save lives if we did it fast enough. And so, for example, even in that process, is something as simple as implementing a filter for making sure the highest acuity patients are brought to the top and to our attention. Like something like that was something that we had laid out right from the get-go, which I think in the initial stages wasn't actually shown to us. Like there was no actual filter or way to sort through the list. You'd think that's kind of like intuitive and it just makes sense. But I think as they're building so much so fast, it just, it wasn't there. But by the next week, it was already implemented and ready to go. The other thing was making sure that there were text alerts going to the patients in case they needed to be followed up for that purpose. So, that was through COVID. We actually published on this. Jessica Locke, who's part of our team, we were able to publish with her help. Big thank you to Jessica. And it's in Telemedicine eHealth Journal. So we didn't think this was going to wind up being a publication or something that was going to be shared with the global audience, but it was. I think it was such a big success and we were able to work so well with this company. I will say that the company, I believe in later stages, continued to grow and was fully integrated into our EHR system as well as Kaiser. So it's pretty neat to see that started from a very initial stage and grew into something that's now just part of what we do. And beyond that, remote patient monitoring, we can use it in so many different manners, as Rebecca alluded to already and spoke to. Chronic care management is one thing, but acute episodes of those chronic, diagnoses happen all the time, right? Your CHF patients, your COPD exacerbations. And so if they have the tools and patients have the ability to check it themselves, we can actually educate them, right? Like we're improving the trajectory of their clinical care by providing those tools to them, right? So there's multiple components there, but I think that was one of our biggest successes, where we're able to, impact a startup's journey, but also make a huge lasting impact on our patients.
Outstanding. All right, Michael, if you could finish this up.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have several we could talk about. I'll focus on a couple. Certainly AI is the technology of our day right now. And so one very successful product that we've implemented was a generative AI product specifically for diagnostic radiologists. And as I spoke about current challenges, its goal was to improve efficiency. And so this particular software technology is a HIPAA compliant software overlay that works with our voice dictation software. Diagnostic radiologist dictates their findings as they go through the exam. Once they get into the impression field, the AI software summarizes and generates the impression based on that particular radiologist's voice. So how do they tend to number, order, organize their impressions? And so it does a couple things. One, it decreases mental burden. So that, another hot topic is decreasing burnout for all of our health professionals. but also improves efficiency. So talking to other radiologists, they've learned to, since the computer's doing what they used to have to say, they can go back and look at the images one more time or work that into their workflow so they can get through each exam faster. And so that was a company at a young startup stage and is now, I think, in their third series of funding, so doing quite well. Another kind of set of examples that I'm very personally familiar with is new device adoption. So as an interventional radiologist, you know, I'm routinely doing procedures that didn't exist when I was in training 10, 15 years ago. And so we, you know, we are a very evidence-based practice. And so, you know, we have to evaluate each device that comes through and how is that device going to impact our care. If it's just going to be another CPT code charge, I'm not interested. If it's going to decrease my procedure time, if it's going to increase my patient outcome, now we have something that we can work with. And so a couple from recent years, there was a thrombectomy device. So rapidly removing blood clots from patient's body. We were doing it a different way with a different device. New device came on the market. We evaluated it, felt like the data was really strong. And we were one of the very early adopters in this region, you know, giving our patients better outcomes, shorter hospital stays, shorter procedure times, less blood loss. So all good things. You know, those are the kind of things that we've had past success with.
Phenomenal. All right. That's yeah, hopefully gives everyone a little bit of a taste of you know what it looks like to get into a system like this and then bring an innovation through and have it take hold. So with that kind of current view of the challenges and then past view of ones coming through, let's go now fast forward to the unpredictable future. But we're going to ask you to take out the crystal ball and you know, with what you know about the challenges in healthcare and technologies that are coming you know, online, if you can look 5 years, 10 years out into the future and predict something about what it might look like in your area of care and how innovation and founders might have been involved in driving that, and why Permanente Medicine is particularly well positioned to be an organization where those sorts of innovations can thrive. It's a little bit evident from the looking backward view, but how do you see MapMG and you all being part of that with founders who might be on this call? And then maybe Sandeep, maybe we'll throw to you first on this one.
Sure. So I think, you know, as I've mentioned, I think the care at home space is going to continue to expand and grow and find new opportunities. I think it's not just necessarily the hospital at home that is really being focused on, because that's like a high ticket item right now. But I think the, you know, skilled nursing at home, skilled nursing services at home, so rehab at home. I think there's going to be additional specialties that look into this as well, right? For example, other countries, they just discussed this at the World Hospital Home Congress, but you know, France, for example, they're already doing chemotherapy at home. They've been doing it for decades. And if you look at Singapore, they're now looking at neonatal jaundice and taking care of pediatrics at home, right? Phototherapy. So there's a lot of opportunity. The US specifically, we have clearly an aging population, increasing cost of healthcare, which is definitely not going down anytime soon. The cost of hospitalization is going like exorbitantly high. And then there's not enough physicians and providers otherwise, right? So including in-home providers. So there's a lot of challenges there and plenty of opportunity to figure out how do we save those, you know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes so that a nurse can go to you know, the other patient, right, quickly, or if they're getting around the beltway, like what's the most efficient way to get there, right? So, you know, you know, I'm certainly betting my career on it, which is why I jumped into the care at home space. You know, but I think there's some things that I still question, like why don't they exist in healthcare yet, right? So, and particularly in the, you know, home health and logistics, I think there's plenty of innovation to happen there.
Wonderful. Hopefully someone on the call is working on exactly that. And Michael, how about if we can have you jump in on your crystal ball as well?
Sure, absolutely. I was on an AI conference maybe 12 months ago, and the moderator said that the era of the radiologist was soon to end, that, you know, AI was going to replace radiologists. So looking forward 5, 10, 15 years, there are people that are predicting that. Maybe I'm biased. I'm not quite ready to be one of those. I think, again, the theme is how do we make the human doctor better? How do we make the human doctor more efficient and take care? This has been a theme of our conference so far today. And so I think that is continuing to be the opportunity in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Certainly, that's my hope for the span of my career. But I also think, we'll be looking for disruptive technologies, right? Something that will replace what is currently a surgery that requires hospitalization can be an outpatient procedure and you go home the same day. And so those are the things, continuing with the same theme of, how do we do the procedure faster, have the patient recover faster, have them be able to go home faster and not take up a hospital bed. Those are the things within my field, radiology, diagnostic radiology, the surgical and procedural spaces that I'll be looking for in the next decade to come.
Perfect. And Rebecca, why don't you finish this up on this one?
Yeah, so I think, somewhat similar to Mike, I think, there's, I think, somewhat of a fear in healthcare of like technology, AI is going to take doctors out of the mix. I actually don't think that's going to happen. I agree with Mike. I think it's going to let us become better clinicians. And I think, ultimately will allow us to engage better with our patients. I think even though we know a lot of young folks who are wanting to just text and maybe we think they don't want to engage, there's still a lot of data around supporting that, especially around the space of behavior change, that in-person, face-to-face conversation, that connectivity, which you don't get from technology specifically, is what allows people to really connect and take those steps towards change. And I think that's where, innovations in tech and AI are going to help to support as we care for various populations. And I think from a pop health perspective, the other thing that I hope and I think will play a large role is predictive analytics. So again, with all of the data that we have with the evolving spaces around pharmaceuticals, around procedures, it's really trying to understand what are the things that my particular patient is going to benefit from? Who do I target this specific medication to that's going to have the most yield and benefit? Who's going to have the best outcome from this procedure? And how do we start honing in on that so that we're providing that specific personalized care so that patients can live their longest, healthiest lives? So that's what I hope for.
Wonderful. All right. I'm going to go through one last question that I have about program engagement, and then we'll start moving over to the questions from the audience. And I think we're going to ask Jessica to get spotlit after these, after we go through this. So just warning you both about that, and then Jessica will moderate the last section with audience questions. And if you joined us late, the Q&A button is where you could drop those in. But let's go from kind of we've covered current challenges. We've looked backward on how innovation has succeeded. We've looked forward into crystal ball, and then let's get a little specific into this program and how you're hoping to engage in the program. And this is for my part just an extraordinary collaboration opportunity. I've been at Techstars for 7 years and running programs for the last 4 of that. And this is a unique and special opportunity to get some of the benefits of a Techstars program and get the additional entire benefit of another organization supporting you and working with you who's interested in deploying the types of solutions that you're all building. And so it's a kind of 2-for-1 from my perspective, and just a real incredible opportunity to be able to work on, hopefully for 10 lucky companies that'll be part of the program. But maybe Mike, if I can start with you, and I'll ask a slightly different question of each of you, but how do you, why don't you just start us off with how do you hope to engage with companies that are accepted? How do you envision that?
Absolutely. I think I'll use the example of how we look at a new innovative idea that's submitted to our innovations team. So when we get a new idea, the first thing we do is due diligence, right? We want to understand the problem and the potential solution. And so that's how I would envision the initial engagement. The founders would have time to embed with the physician specialists, the subject matter experts that could potentially be impacted by their product or their company or their solution, and really understand, what's the day-to-day, what is the current workflow that our physicians are doing, and how could it change? How could it get better? And then from there, it's a collaboration. It's a bi-directional exchange of ideas, of information, so that at the end of this process, the product's going to be better. It's going to be a good fit for what the physician needs, and it's going to result in a better outcome, a better result, for our members. So that's what I would hope for.
Terrific. And Sandeep, how do you see, pivoting from that to what's unique about Permanente Medicine's approach? And if you could hit on value-based care a little bit as kind of a key theme in that, because we talk about that right on the webpage as well. And how does that make for an ideal environment for startups to validate and refine solutions?
Sure. I'll touch upon why or what makes it unique. It's almost like everything. It's the reason I came here was quite literally because as a resident, you see patients coming through the ER and you have to admit these patients and their documentation, everything about them clinically, like you're trying to figure out, what the story is, right? And then once you come up with, you treat them, you have this care plan, elaborate care plan, which is beautifully laid out. You're discharging them home and you're like, I don't know if this is going to work because I don't know if they have all the resources they need. I don't know if, where they're going to go to get the resources. Like, I don't know who's going to follow up with them. And that was not a good feeling, like as a resident to go through with that. And so obviously in a system like, that Permanente Medicine has now set up, it's all integrated, right? So everything is there for the patient. We know, they're going to be receiving focused, high quality, evidence-based care, right? So, and of course, it's affordable as well. The additional benefit with Permanente Medicine, and specifically MapMG, is that founders would have access to a multi-venue, multi-specialty care delivery system, and it's pretty much every single specialty you can think of. And then it's clinics, urgent cares, hospital, and home, right? And SNFs, actually. We have patients in our rehab facilities that our physicians go to. So it's the entire spectrum of healthcare, which is awesome. And then we're additionally uniquely geographically spread across the major metro market, right? So Maryland, Virginia, and DC. I've actually done this myself as kind of being an entrepreneur within MapMG, right? So I didn't go the entrepreneur route, I went the entrepreneur route, started a program within our system, and I was able to pilot a program regionally, right? So in Baltimore, we went after specific patient population and coming out of one specific hospital, and then we compared and contrasted that to Virginia or the DC suburban Maryland populations. And whichever pilots worked, we failed fast and we learned from, and whichever ones didn't, etc. And we just continued moving forward. So that's like a huge advantage if someone were to work with MapMG. And me personally, the assurance I can give you is I've carried 2 phones since 2016 now, and before that it was a pager. I'm always accessible. So if you're not thinking about it, I'm probably actively thinking about it. And so that's like, my commitment to any founder who ultimately works with us.
Extraordinary. And yeah, and I'll also put in a plug for a future article that we're hoping to publish jointly between Techstars and Permanente Medicine about how value-based care provides a uniquely advantageous environment for startups to go ahead and pilot, not encumbered by fee-for-service and other challenges that can take you down a wrong direction. So more on that to follow. And Sandeep, thank you for sharing that. And we're going to take you up on the, do you share both phone numbers or just okay?
Sure. If we got something going, absolutely. You got to reach me. You got to reach me.
Perfect. And then Rebecca, if you can round us out and as my last question, then we'll go to the audience questions. But what does it take? And I'm going to add a disclaimer that we know there are no guarantees, and anyone who gets into the accelerator can't expect this, but it could be a reasonable target of what they're hoping for. But what would it take to successfully land a POC or pilot and ultimately a contract with a major health system like MapMG? And how do you envision that, and what do you see a path to that for companies that might join us on this program?
Yeah, so I think, kind of hitting on both a little bit about what Mike and Sandeep both talked about, as a value-based care organization, that's, I think, what is kind of near to our hearts. And, really anything that's gonna, like we said, our interests are broad. We serve a very diverse patient population. There's a lot of needs. We're trying to, more efficiently and effectively take care of all of them in a very diverse geographic area, with a large, group of physicians that we're also trying to ensure are feeling proud of the work that they do and invested in the care that they provide. So I think, for us, our values are based in, affordability, quality of care, and physician satisfaction. And if it's hitting on any of those things, I think that those are, kind of the entities and the core values of what we're looking to kind of broaden through this type of a project. I wouldn't say it's limited to any specific, kind of idea. But, I think our interest is broad. Our aim is big. And so, we invite and want to hear what those unique solutions would be. And if, again, we love to pilot things in this region. We are Permanente, but we're, one of the, I would say, smaller Permanente medical groups, which gives us the ability to be very facile. We like to try things, move quickly, pivot when we want to. And so again, we've been doing a lot of that work for a very long time, internally, and are excited to learn to partner with groups to broaden what we're able to provide. But the ability to kind of be able to do that, and if we see that there is good results, then there's a good application that we could broaden to beyond just the pilot program.
Phenomenal. All right. Well, I'll see you. Oh, great. We got Jessica joining here as well. And Jessica will be joining us again tomorrow morning for our information session in AMA. So I'm going to hand the baton over to Jessica. And I will note that with about 15 minutes and 56 questions, we probably won't hit them all, but we'll go through them all for sure, and maybe incorporate some of them into tomorrow's session as a group as well. But I'll pass the baton of moderation to Jessica, and thank you for a terrific panel so far.
Great, thank you so much once again to Keith and my esteemed colleagues, just for such an incredible and insightful discussion this afternoon. I'd also like to extend my appreciation to the founders joining us today, as well as those that are going to be joining us tomorrow, to just learn more about this really exciting program. Again, as Keith mentioned, we've received a wealth of thoughtful questions, and while we may not be able to get to every single one of them today, we have a few minutes left, so we'll hopefully get rapid fire and answer some of the common questions that we've seen through the chat in order to provide you the clarity you need to confidently apply for the program. So we're gonna knock out maybe a few program logistic questions first, maybe that Keith you can answer, and then we'll get to some of our panelists to answer the other clinical questions. So Keith, I see that people are here from all over the country, world, but this article indicates Accelerator is in person in DC. Can you please clarify?
Yeah, so it is in person in DC, and you'll get value by being here live with us in person. We'll tend to run Mondays through Thursdays for the 3 months of program, so you'll want to be able to have the co-founder present in person for this program.
Great. And I'm in the UK. If we were given the privilege to join the program, would I need to apply for a specific visa to allow me to join you in DC?
That's probably a question for your lawyer, not for me like that. But meaning the not your Jessica, the asker's lawyer. But Techstars does have a standard letter for companies that are accepted that helps support a visa application in whatever country you're coming from, stating how valuable and impressive it is that you've gotten into a program and so on. So it usually is helpful for getting visas, but you'd have to legal counsel.
Great. And as Keith had already mentioned, a question came in regarding how many startups will be in the cohort. There will be 10. that are accepted into this first year of the program. And for any additional program questions, please visit the website. There's a lot of answers to questions that we've been asked. So please go ahead and visit the website. And I'm sure Keith and the team will be happy to answer any additional questions that you have if you reach out to them. All right, so Rebecca, what's your perspective on the application of value-based care in young non-Medicare population?
So, I mean, I think it's completely applicable, right? I think that's part of where we want to be able to engage with young, healthy patients. We want to be able to keep patients healthy and not send people for tests or studies or things that aren't necessary or are not adding value to their overall health. So from my perspective, I don't think value-based care is just a Medicare population-based approach. I think it's really a person-based approach. And our intent is to extend that to everyone that we care for.
Thank you. We've received several questions related to mental health. Could you please share your perspective on early intervention and preventative measures for mental health? And I think the answer to this question is yes, we are 100% interested in exploring innovative solutions in this area and other areas within healthcare. But could you talk a little bit more about your perspective on interventions and preventative measures in this really important space?
To me, right, Jessica?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I think that is a great question. We all know that there is increasing mental health demands. We're certainly feeling that here in our own healthcare delivery. We have looked at various solutions. I think that there's still a wealth of opportunity to continue to explore, providing not only mental health care for those who are in need, but how do we build up resiliency amongst persons so that they feel that they are ready to kind of cope with the demands of life as they come to them and feel equipped to tackle those things without it leading to increased anxiety, depression, as potential examples. So I think that there's certainly a need to leverage information in that space.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. Sandeep, where is Kaiser Permanente in relations to hospital at home services?
Yeah, I think we're still early. And I think, frankly, the whole industry is early. So across the US, I would say, at least, some other nations are a little bit advanced and ahead. I think part of that is because regulations and, quite literally, we need acts of Congress to happen in this space, as opposed to just like 6 months extensions of the CMS waivers. So I think we're still quite early, but at the same time, because we are an integrated model and we're MapMG and KP, we have the ability to move a little bit quicker and I would say be a little bit more aggressive with certain capabilities because they're already at our disposal. It's just a matter of sending them in the right direction and creating workflows for it, right? And the ability for us to pilot things a lot faster.
Great, thank you. Mike, what advice would you give founders struggling to build the critical mass of data that would conclusively verify the efficacy of their device?
Right. This is a tough one to answer without knowing exactly what the device was or what stage of development you're in. I mean, I was an NIH fellow 20 years ago and doing animal research, and I think that still hasn't quite hit clinical relevance yet, what I was working on, 2 decades ago. So it really depends what it is and, what's the risk to the patient, right? If it's something that's non-invasive, not at risk, there's going to be easier avenues to have patients volunteer, easier paths to IRB. But I would suggest, working with an organization with lots of patients that may have a population that fits your device, whether it's university or an accelerator that may have access to population that fits.
Thank you. So this question actually, Rebecca or Sandeep, if you want to answer, how do you think programs like remote patient monitoring and chronic care management are adding value to the value-based care focus? I know you talked about this a little bit during the panel, but for founders, that may be interested in applying, what are you thinking about and what should they consider that you haven't already shared with this group today?
I mean, I think that this continues to be a growing space, right? There are numerous ways that patients are tracking information about their own health. The right way to kind of integrate that information to make it useful from a clinician standpoint that kind of, again, allows the patient to know that we're engaged with them on their care, but also provide them feedback, I think is becoming an increasing critical space. And I think it does add to the value equation. That's stuff that's all done remotely. I mean, historically, we have not, when we've engaged with patients remotely, that's not been a co-payment that we've charged for patients, right? So it's data that we're then able to act on that helps to, better inform next steps. So there's lots of different device trackers that are out there and not limited to that. But I think just as a general principle in terms of taking that information, connecting it into our system, bringing it to light to a patient in a way that's usable, and we're able to then synthesize it back in our patient-clinician communications can be incredibly valuable, can certainly add to our value.
Great. Sandeep, what are the chief components you look for in terms of a startup innovation being ready to be tried out on your patients?
So because we're still early with care at home, I think the most obvious one for me is I want the obvious problems addressed, right? So something that has high volume is tangible, right? Like we're going to see near immediate results, and it's scalable because obviously we're able to pilot it, we can scale it out, and could potentially expand from there, right? So those are the things that I'm normally looking for, and normally things that I'm specifically doing, even within MapMG.
Mike, most of the examples of the adopted innovations had integration with the EMR, which can be very costly, time-consuming for early-stage companies. Does Permanente Medicine believe that almost any innovation will require this?
I don't think so, and I think our history supports that. We have multiple examples of products that began as standalone products or services, and it was only until later, once they grew to a point where it made sense to integrate with EMR or other technology workflows, that integration work was done. So I don't see that as a non-starter.
Right, and in fact, the example that Sandeep had provided, with during COVID, leveraging pulse ox devices and the startup company, right, to provide remote monitoring at home care, that wasn't integrated in our EMR for several years. So we had to move fast, obviously. During COVID, we needed a solution. So it was a minimal viable solution. We got everything up and running in Sandy, 2 weeks or less. Yeah, and we were able to provide, the care that was needed to patients. And I was
tag along. We have in the Mid-Atlantic a robust technology integration team that is highly skilled, highly knowledgeable, highly motivated. They really see their work as patient care. And so, this is something that we have and that we have experience doing.
Great. So we only have a few more minutes, Keith. Should we close here, or I mean, we could keep going, I think, all day. And the answers that the panelists are providing are exceptional. Again, I've been with Permanente Medicine for nearly two decades at this point, and I'm still in awe about just the top-notch doctors and the expertise that we have here. So just thank you again to my colleagues and to Keith for hosting this today. This has been really insightful.
Yeah, I'll second that. I could go on and listen to this for a long time, as I gather our audience could as well, because everyone stayed. So this is, and I was looking, you're looking at the camera, so they're engaged and interested in this, and this is fascinating. And I've been at Techstars for a while. I'm working with founders for a long time, and this is unique to have the opportunity to get the combination of a what I consider a world-class accelerator and the opportunity to work with an organization like this. If you're deploying something in the healthcare industry, is I get more excited each time I hear more about it. So I thank you very much to the panelists for joining. Thank all of you for coming and listening in, and hopefully getting inspired by some of the things that you might be able to do. brief plug again for having a look at the website, search Techstars Permanente, you'll find that. There's an apply now link and a lot more information there, and including a link to sign up for the information session tomorrow morning if you didn't see the one last week. Thank you all for joining, and we hope to see you soon. And then